Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. This is John. I am the event coordinator here at Murder by the Book in Houston. And before we get started with tonight's virtual event, I'm going to just do a couple quick store announcement things just to let you know what has been going on with us at Murder by the Book lately. We are open. We still have people call and ask if we're open for browsing. Yes, we're absolutely 100% open. We would ask that you mask up when you come to visit us. We are starting to host some in-store events, which we're so excited to have some authors back in the store again. So when you look at the event calendar, it's going to be a mix of in-store and in-person events. In-store and virtual events. And when you look at the calendar, it'll either say in-store or virtual. So definitely take a look at that. We have Mark Graney tomorrow night at 6:30. On Saturday, we're going to have Carolyn Frost signing at the store. She has a book called The Shadows of Pecan Hollow, which has been getting great reviews. She's going to be at the store on Saturday at 3. So lots of really great stuff coming up. So I hope that you guys will check out the event calendar and see what we've got going on. If you're historical fans, we just confirmed we'll be doing a virtual event with Reese Bowen and her daughter Claire Broyles for the new Molly Murphy book, and Deborah Crombie is going to be interviewing them. That's going to be March 1st. So I hope that you will come back and check in with that. I did want to also mention, if you do come to any of the in-store events, we are requiring masks for the in-store events. You know, if you've been in the store, the signing area is a small area. We want to make sure everybody feels comfortable. And we've told all of our visiting authors and publishers that we would enforce that. So as we've been telling people, we wear them when we come in at 10 till we go home. So it shouldn't be too bad for you to have to wear one for an hour and a half to come see an author. We just want to make sure everybody feels comfortable and safe. So I hope that you will come check out one of those. It's super important now that we're able to have people in store. If somebody that you are interested in is coming, please come see them. Please pre-order their books. We definitely need to let publishers know that we love doing the virtual stuff, but that there's also a desire and a need for that kind of face-to-face in-store interaction as well. Also wanted to mention before I forget, we do have signed book plates for tonight's book. So if you order a copy of The Imposter from us, you will get a signed book plate to go with it. And while Deanna and I are chatting, if you have any questions, please post those in the live chat on YouTube or the comments on Facebook, and we will get to them. But I'm going to get Deanna out and get us started. How are you tonight, Deanna?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me, and big love to Murder by the Book. You guys were one of my last events before I went home and locked down, and I haven't been able to have an event since. But I'm holding out hope that maybe later this year I'll get to come back and see you in person. And thank you so much for having my launch event for An Impossible Imposter.
My pleasure. Happy Pub Day. It's so exciting that there's a new Veronica Speedwell out in the world.
Pub Day, yeah.
So for those of you who may not be familiar with Deanna and have just tuned in because you got the notification that we've gone live, Deanna Raybourn is the author of the award-winning New York Times bestselling Lady Julia Gray series, as well as the USA Today bestselling and Edgar-nominated Veronica Speedwell mysteries and several standalone works. So the newest book in the Veronica Speedwell series is An Impossible Imposter, which is book number 7, and I have it wrong in the banner. I have the, not Anne.
I didn't even notice, but yeah, it is.
So it's book 7 in the series. So Deanna, can you tell us a little bit about what Stoker and Veronica are up to in this new one?
Absolutely. So in this adventure, they are asked by Sir Hugo Montgomery, who is I like to call him their frenemy. Sometimes they get along with him, sometimes not so much, because Sir Hugo works for Scotland Yard. He's the head of Special Branch. His job is to kind of, among other things, look out for the security of the royal family. And this has caused him to cross paths and kind of tangle up with Veronica and Stoker. He had Stoker strip searched at one point. But he needs a favor. He needs a personal favor. And Veronica is just the person to do it. So he comes to her and asks, kind of Godfather-like, if you'll do a favor for me this day. So she agrees, and she and Stoker end up in a mansion out on Dartmoor, which, if you've ever read Hound of the Baskervilles, you're familiar with Dartmoor. And they end up there kind of doing this favor and getting embroiled in just kind of an over-the-top adventure, as they always do.
So yeah, Robin says in the comments, yeah, the last author event that she attended was you in March of 2020. So
I was closing down bookstores on my way across the country. I was literally the last event for everybody. And every day my publisher called and said, "Are you okay being on the road? Do you want to come home? We'll bring you home." And every time I was like, "No, it's fine. I can do this. We're good." And every time we kept just right ahead of everything being closed, and we were safe and it was great. But oh man, it felt a little Typhoid Mary at one point, I got to tell you.
It was the weirdest week, and it was so weird. Like, you came in and we were like, okay, do we hug? Do we not hug? We haven't seen you, but we're not going to hug because there's this pandemic. Like,
we're going to bleach wipe everything. And yeah.
I mean, at that point, like, we hadn't even been told to wear masks yet. It was
God, no, it was way before that.
Weird.
It was bizarre. It was a weird liminal time, but I was very grateful that I got to get completely through that tour before I had to go home and literally disinfect everything I owned. And, because we didn't realize then how it spread. So it was quite an interesting time.
Oh, and on the flip side, Marin just said that the first virtual event she was willing to attend was yours last year. So yay. So we've got somebody's last, somebody's first.
No, and that's honestly, that is one of the lovely things that has come out of the change to doing events virtually is a lot of times the readers who can't make it into the store physically because there isn't a bookstore near them that's hosting. Mm-hmm. I mean, readers from around the world can figure out how amazing Murder by the Book is and attend events now because they're accessible, which I absolutely love. So my hope in future is that we'll be able to do hybrid events. Mm-hmm. And figure out a way to kind of take care of everybody and get everybody in and involved and chatting, whether it's, through your screen or face to face, whatever's making people feel safe and happy and whatever's accessible to them.
So as we mentioned, this new book is number 7 in the series. Do you recommend people go back and start with the first one, or do you think that they can jump in here?
Technically you can. I work really, really hard to make sure that there are no spoilers in the books as far as like in book 7, you're not going to know who the murderer was in book 6. Yeah. You can go back and read the puzzle. If you really want to get the full essence of who these people are and how they came to know each other, I say start with book 1. That's my preference as a reader. I always love to go back and I love discovering a series, reading book 1 and then realizing, I've got 7 more books or 10 more books I can binge all at one time and kind of get that whole world rolling. That's just my preference. But like I said, I work really hard to make sure that if you want to plunge right in with Imposter, you probably could.
So one of the things that I love about them is as you're reading, if something is alluded to that might have potentially happened in one of the previous books, there's a little asterisk and it'll say at the bottom, this happened in this book. Right. And which is really fun. I think that Elizabeth Peters did that in the Amelia Peabody books as well.
She did. She started to do it in some of the, I can't remember when they started, but it wasn't in the first so many. Mm-hmm. It was later in the series. And I thought, that's a really good idea. So I started that technique. And you don't see it that often, but as a reader, I just think it's really helpful to figure out kind of where you can go. So if you've missed something, or, sometimes if you want to just refresh your memory and go back and have a reread, where was this one? When did this one happen? What was that cool thing? Because it's, I'm losing track of now that we're 7 years in, and I'm writing book 8. I'm like, when did I introduce Tiberius? When did he first crop up? And for those who are new to the series, Tiberius is one of our supporting characters who I have to be really careful how many books I put him in because he's so much fun to write. He just kind of has a tendency to take over. So I have to rein him in and not put him in every single book.
So are there more Veronica books than there were Lady Julia books?
Yes, there were 5
Yeah.
Julia books and
Yeah.
then 4 digital novellas
Novellas,
that
that's right. Yeah.
followed that. So we are, which I kind of, altogether word-wise, lengthwise, that
Mhm.
counts as another book essentially. So there were basically 6 novel-length projects for Julia. And so with this series now, 7 has just been published. I'm writing 8. I'm also under contract for 9. So we've got more Veronica to come.
Good. And so you mentioned before when we've chatted that one of the things that you feel is like some of the best research that you come across is memoirs of this time period that you're writing about to kind of get those like really specific feelings and the way people talked and things like that. Do you think that that had any influence on you writing this series as first person?
Oh, that's such a great question. You know what? Maybe subconsciously it did. For one of the things I love about Victorians is the fact that they left records of everything that they did. If they went someplace, if they met someone, if they got out of bed in the morning, they wrote about it. They wrote a letter, they kept a journal, they prepared talks, because, of course, in the days before radio and TV and computers, you made your own entertainment. And so
Mhm.
a lot of times, there were touring companies of theater groups and opera singers, and there were circuses, but people also made their own entertainment within their own community. And a lot of the ways you would do that is you would go to somebody's house and they would give a little talk on where they had traveled, or they would go to like a local, there'd be little societies specializing in travel or natural history, or basically like social clubs. And you could go there and people would deliver lectures. And so there was all this written material. And so much of it has survived because the Victorian era is just not that far in the past. I had a fantastic company that specializes in archival newspapers in England contact me a number of years ago when I was still writing the Julia Gray books, and they said, "Hey, if we sent you some newspapers, what dates would you like?" And so I gave them just random some dates like in 1888 and 1889, and they sent me newspapers, and I opened the box and realized these weren't facsimile copies. Like, these were original newspapers that they just had extra copies of. And so you can hold in your hand, and they're not like super precious or expensive, these things that were original, and you can see this perfect snapshot into how people lived. And it's really deeply fascinating. And so I guess maybe when you absorb enough of that, it does kind of influence the voice a little bit. I just loved the idea of delivering Veronica's voice in a very, very specific, direct way, because she's such a direct person. I wanted to make sure that that it read as, "Hey, this is what my life was like, and this is what happened, and here's how it happened." So I thought that would be a fun way to do it. First person is my wheelhouse. I love writing first person, and I think a lot of that actually comes from so many of my favorite and more formative books when I was young were first person. All of the Sherlock Holmes novels, because Watson is telling the story, are all first person. So many of the Victoria Holts that I read, first person, so Rebecca. So all of these books that just, really kind of, Jane Eyre for that matter, those were books that I was reading when I was kind of first developing my voice as a writer, because I was a kid and I knew I was going to write. And so I think that became a very natural thing for me to do. I just finished a book where I had to write significant chunks of it in third person. And that was such an interesting challenge to go, oh, okay, this is a completely different voice. So that was fun. It was a huge challenge. It was a lot of fun, but yeah, very much a challenge.
So we've got, this is great. We've got, Lily has just commented that she's watching from Spain. We've got,
Hi, Lily.
Somebody else mentioned that they're watching from Australia. So we've got somebody's on New England. So we've got a good worldwide audience tonight, which is fantastic.
Love it.
So one of the things that also works really well about these books being written in first person is, like, Veronica is really in control of how much information we have about her. She's been
Exactly.
very quiet about her past and her paramours and things like that. And we start to find out some more about her past in this book. So what we do find out in this one, I don't know if, because you get it, I don't know, maybe 100 or so pages in, so I don't know if it's spoiler, so I'll kind of dance around it a little bit. But
Please dance around.
Yeah, you know what, people, because you like get
to space, spoiler-free zone.
Yeah. So the thing that we find out about Veronica's past, is that something that you knew when you started and you were just waiting for the right point to let us know, or is it something that surprised you in the writing?
Pardon me, I've got a little bit of winter wheeze. All of our pollen is actually starting to go crazy already. It's actually something that I knew. And I hadn't really fleshed out too many of the details of how I wanted to explore this, but I've given little kind of dribs and drabs about Veronica's past, I kind of doled it out a little bit at a time. And there are some things that we keep going back to. It's almost become a running gag at this point that, she was shipwrecked with a gentleman from China. She was kidnapped by Corsican bandits. She was there when Krakatoa exploded. And so I thought, okay, at some point we need to look at one of those experiences. And so I don't think it's too spoilery in this stage to say that we discussed the eruption of Krakatoa and what Veronica was doing there and how it had an impact on her life. And so that was, it was a way of exploring her past. Because I kind of alternate as to whether we're getting a chunk of Stoker's past or a chunk of Veronica's. Because I don't want to just like give everything to everybody right all in book one. The idea was I actually wrote a lot more about Stoker's past in book one. And my editor at the time said, I love this. This is great. This was for you. This is not for readers. Let's take it out of this book and dole it out a little bit at a time over subsequent books. And I thought that's genius. That's exactly what I need to do. And that's what I did. So, we found out a lot more about Stoker's past in, I think A Treacherous Curse is the one where we see the most about him. And Dangerous Collaboration, we see a fair bit about Tiberius's past. And this was another opportunity to get a chunk of why Veronica is the way she is.
And it's so interesting because in this book, we get to see her kind of vulnerable in a way that I don't know that we really have gotten to in the series, not only like emotionally, but even sort of just kind of her standing kind of in the world. It's really interesting to kind of get to see that side of her and get to see like her have to tell us that side of her. Well,
I think we've seen over the course of the books that Veronica, who has very, very strong defensive walls, has gotten entangled with Stoker, who has very, very strong defensive walls. And they're both having to kind of dismantle those in order to make space for each other. And they're not very good at it. And those walls are not completely down yet. But at the same time, Veronica is also kind of dismantling those walls a little bit for the readers and allowing the readers in a little bit more into, there are huge chunks of her life that she just draws a veil over and she doesn't really tell the reader much about. And now, 7 books in, she's starting to say, okay, friends, you've been around for a little while. I can probably let this piece out. I can probably be honest about this at this point. And I think part of that too is because throughout her relationship with Stoker, she's also assembling kind of a found family, because her, birth family is not a thing for her. So she's developing, Tiberius, she has sort of a weird sibling relationship with it. Like it's kind of alarming in a way. She's developing kind of, these sisterly relationships with Lord Rosemore's sister, and even in an odd way, kind of with J.J. Butterworth, who might be her first, proper female friend who also works for a living. And so we see her kind of forming attachments to people, which is new space for Veronica. She's not really entirely comfortable with it. And so vulnerability is not a space that she stands in with ease.
Yeah. And I also love, so we've been as the series has started, we've been slowly seeing Veronica and Stoker kind of get closer to and closer and closer together. And I like now that you have them, they're in this weird spot where they're in a relationship, but they're not in a relationship. It's like this weird companionship relationship. So, and which is really interesting because it seems to work so well for them as they're trying to kind of figure out their lives and what their lives would be together. What are some of the challenges and what's some of the fun about writing like that?
Oh, it's super fun to write a couple that has really sparky, bantery dialogue. It's one of the things that I do literally in every one of my books because I just think it's so much fun to write. And that is kind of a very natural place for me to be because that's actually the relationship I have with my husband. Like we still do that. And if you spend any time with us, and well, he's a little shy at first around strangers, but if you spend time with him and he's gotten to know you, you see that part of our relationship. So that to me feels fun and it feels, natural and it feels sexy and it feels enjoyable, to put on a page for other people to experience. The challenge with it is in trying to keep that fresh and trying not to, I don't want to put a picket fence around Veronica and Stoker. That's not who they are. My husband and I have been married for, this year will be 32 years. We've been together since we were 19. And it's over the years, that aspect of our relationship hasn't changed. That kind of playfulness and that sparkiness hasn't changed. But we settled down and did the picket fence. We had the kid. We did, and that's not where I want Veronica and Stoker at all. So the challenge is figuring out how to keep a couple super committed to their feelings for each other without doing it in a way that is extremely sanctified by society and extremely, I don't want to tie it all up in a really neat bow. I want them to keep surprising us and to keep surprising each other. And so figuring out how to do that is an interesting challenge. And it's one that I enjoy. It's part of the reason that, I didn't get them together too quickly early on in the series. There was a lot of, will they, won't they? Okay, well, they did. But what kind of ramifications does that bring? Because there's the physical side of it, but then there's the emotional side of it. And, the interesting thing is the physical side, they're completely in sync. The emotional side is where they have their chemistry is a little off sometimes on the emotional side.
Because it seems like they're both, I don't want to say damaged, but they're both kind of
so damaged.
I mean, and they're damaged, like they're both damaged kind of in almost the same way when you talk about like their families and their relationships. So so it makes perfect sense that like trying to deal with that they would butt heads. So we have a very active topic in the chat that I want to get to before we move past it. So Carolyn says that Stoker strikes her as a Gemini. So people want to know what Veronica and Stoker's horoscope signs are. Do you know?
My God. That's so funny. No, here's the funny thing. I always do astrological signs for my characters. And theirs were the only ones that I had trouble with. But I will tell you, Stoker's a Taurus. Stoker's a Taurus. He can be bullheaded. He likes his comforts. He's down to earth. He is solid and dependable. He's a straight up Taurus for sure. Veronica is a Cancer. Her birthday's June 25th. She's a Cancer, but very strong Gemini energy because she's close to that side of Cancer. So it's a Cancer Taurus kind of thing.
Perfect. So Carolyn says that she is a Taurus, so she definitely supports that.
There you go. I'm very glad.
So one of the things that I also wanted to mention is I want to talk a little bit about the taxidermy in the book, because when Stoker and Veronica go off to look at this collection to see whether or not it's going to work for the museum. You know, Stoker is really excited that there might be this tiger there. And when it turns out that this imposter might be an imposter and they're not sure, I love that his first response is, oh my God, he's after my tiger. Like that is like,
thank you. Thank you. I laughed my ass off when I wrote that line because I'm like, this is so Stoker. Like the first thing he's worried about is not it, because the whole crux of the book is this person that they're going to meet masquerading as the heir to an estate where there's land, there's money, and there's this extraordinarily valuable jewelry from India. That's not what Stoker's worried about. Stoker is worried about, is he masquerading as this completely different person solely in order to steal my Tasmanian tiger? Like that's his big concern, because that is just peak Stoker, you know, to have this thylacine that he is just obsessed with, and to assume that everyone else is as, you know, kind of just laser focused as he is and has the same priorities that he does. I mean, Veronica loves her a good butterfly trophy, but this is even too much for her. She's like, come on, perspective, bro. Like, no one wants your tiger.
Yeah, I read it and I was like, oh my God, this is like the most Stoker reaction he could have this entire scenario. So yeah.
Peak Stoker. Peak Stoker.
And I love that while they are looking through this collection, they come across these dioramas of crusading knights and nuns that are made out of taxidermied animals. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Okay. So in the course of doing my research for Stoker's character, I came across, because Stoker is by profession a natural historian. And at this period in time, if you were the sort of person who was putting together natural history specimens for museum collections, which Stoker is, you would usually go out in the field and you would hunt the animal yourself. You would field dress it. You would take it back to the city. You would, you know, taxidermy it yourself. And then, pardon me, 1 second. Sorry, the wheeze got me. You would prepare the diorama yourself. You would do everything that you could, because Stoker's actually on the cutting edge of display. Because if anybody who's familiar with the Natural History Museum in New York has been to the Akeley Hall of Mammals, which is named after Carl Akeley, who was doing this very thing. And the dioramas that are there with these gorgeous trophies are set against painted backdrops that look like their natural habitat. There are specimens of grasses and flowers and jungle vines that were, you know, indigenous to the area where these animals came from. That was being done for the very first time right when Stoker's working. So I have him kind of on the forefront of all of this. And so I had to do a ton of research to figure out what would Stoker know, what would his methods be. And I came across this just weird obsession Victorians had for taxidermy. And one of the things they would do is they would take very, very common animals like kittens, like mice, and they would sometimes do enormous tableau with them. There's one taxidermist in particular who used to do this, and it's horrifying. And he did the kitten's wedding, where it's all the little kittens that I'm assuming were just God, trigger warning. That I'm assuming were just drowned at birth, because they're all from the same litter and they're all the same age and clearly didn't die of natural causes. They're all put into like little bridesmaids dresses, and there's the little vicar who's performing the ceremony and the little bride and groom. And it's horrifying. And so I thought, well, obviously I have to put that in there. But I didn't want to do, this is a very specific tableau that was done. And this thing is, I mean, it's feet long, it's massive. And it's like, you can visit it in England. It's still there. It's open to the public. You can go see this thing. And I thought, of course, Stoker's going to have to run across this. Someone's going to have done this, and Stoker's going to be horrified. But I was trying to think, okay, what other thing would you have besides a wedding? And that's when I went, oh, a whole big, stupid crusader siege, because it's just ridiculous. And then, you know, somebody would build a little castle and no, I thought that's utterly bonkers. And that's why I wanted to do it, because it was just so over the top. But Victorians were, so it seemed very appropriate for that kind of mindset.
Yeah. They did Blue Rider Press before they folded did Walter Potter. I was trying to think of who it was. So Melanie just did, so Blue Rider Press did a whole picture book of all of these Walter Potter things, and I brought it home from work, and Matt was like, what the hell is that? Why did you bring them to our house?
The first time I ran across Potter's work, I was so legitimately horrified, because I mean, it's just like, no, you didn't. Yeah. But he did. Like, he just went all in on it. He was so committed. And it's just, oh God, it's horrifying. It's horrifying.
McKenna was like, McKenna was like, do we need this for the bookstore? I'm like, we're a murder mystery bookstore. Yes, we need a stack of them to go right in front of my register, please.
It's so bad. It's just so bad. It really was. So that's why I mean, I like to torture Stoker just a little bit. And so I thought, this is going to offend him on every level, because there's something so, first it's the horrible big colonizer energy of a crusader scene, which is terrible enough. But then, oh, what did you do to these poor animals? Because Stoker's whole thing is, if you're going to have a trophy, we need this to be as well done as it possibly can be, so that we can respect. There it is. There it is. Oh my God. Oh my God. I kind of need a copy. And so the idea for Stoker is, you have to honor this animal's life. And the idea is, you respect the animal, you show it to its best advantage, you use it to educate people so that they'll understand why you need to not hunt them. You don't have to, because we brought one to you. That's all you need. You don't need to keep them in zoos. And so Stoker is very much kind of at the forefront of the conservation movement, and believes that these animals should be preserved with dignity. And so now people on Twitter send me like bad taxidermy memes, because they're like, oh, Stoker would never. And I'm like, no, Stoker would never. Stoker is horrified. Stoker is horrified. But yeah, I mean, hold that book up again. How many copies do y'all have at Murder by the Book?
I don't think it's in print anymore, because the press isn't around. But I will send you the info, the ISBN, and everything. And so if you want to track one down,
it is. Yeah, for anybody who's interested in like the horrifying kind of commercialization of taxidermy, because when it started, it was usually hunting trophies. And every once in a while it would be for, kind of zoological education. But then Walter Potter really just sentimentalized the hell out of it. And using these really common animals and putting them in just these kind of saccharine sweet settings. it's so peak Victorian. It's appalling.
So because you have two, it looks like it's out of print. I'm going to drop a link in the chat for everybody in case they want to try to track it down somewhere else. But because you have both of your main characters are, Jeff Abbott's watching, and he says that he did not have kitten diorama on tonight's bingo card.
Well, you should have, Jeff. Come on.
He's not new.
You know me, Jeff. Come on.
What's happening here? So because you have both of your characters both have these kind of very specific scientific jobs, what does that do for you in terms of research and having to keep up with like the cutting edge taxidermy stuff and like all the methods that what Veronica would use to catch butterflies? Does it make research even harder for you?
It's easier because of the fact that it's Victorian. Because there, at a certain point, I have to stop, because there are only certain, if I'm researching a particular butterfly and I want to know if Veronica would have had it in her collection, I go and check the etymology of the entomology, and I figure out when was that butterfly named. And, if Linnaeus named it, I'm golden, because that's 18th century, we're good to go. But there were some varieties were never netted until the 1970s and 1980s. And that's when I know, okay, that particular butterfly I can't use. Every once in a while I create a butterfly because I need a very specific one. Which I did in a dangerous collaboration. I had to create a glasswing butterfly because I needed a very specific type of glasswing. It's fun research. It's very interesting research, and it's very far away from what I do. So I have to work at it. I did actually raise butterflies. for research. A lot of museums, science museums, will sell these little kits of like how to grow a butterfly, and they're for kids. Like I bought a children's kit on how to raise butterflies, and they come in the chrysalis, and you put them in their little container that they come with, and you put little twigs and leaves in there, and you wait, you know, a couple of days, weeks, whatever, and then they will come out of their chrysalis fully formed, gorgeous butterflies. And you leave them in there for just a little bit to let their wings dry out, and then you release them into the wild. And so I raised some painted ladies, and it was absolutely fascinating. You know, one of the things that I didn't realize is, so when butterflies, when they poo, it's called frass, and frass smells awful. And I made the mistake of putting this thing in my kitchen. And so like for a week and a half, the kitchen smelled like butterfly ass. And I am just like, I have to, and you can't move them once they're there because like they're stable and they're happy. And you're like, I could kill them. I can't move them. So we just had to put up with it and like eat out all week. And my husband was so grateful when they finally flew off and we could like fumigate the kitchen. Yeah. But I had no idea that they smelled that terrible when they're hatching. They just smelled repellent. So, you know, you learn things the hard way sometimes. Yeah. Yeah. But it's always, I always get really, really nervous when I'm opening an email and it's from somebody saying, I work at the such and such collection. And I'm like, oh God, what did I do? And they've been really lovely. I've gotten some great emails, specifically from lepidopterists saying, no, you got it. You're good.
Okay.
Like, well, thank God.
One of the other things that I love in the book that Veronica and Stoker both share a love of Victorian sensation fiction. So for people who are watching that might not know what that is, can you tell them just real quick what Victorian sensation fiction is or what it entails?
Yeah, you know, a lot of people think that there weren't really female detectives early on, but there actually were. There was a huge group, kind of collection of literature that was written about female detectives. There were lots of these little yellow covered novels that you could buy at a railway station for next to nothing. And the idea was that there have always been book stalls in railway stations, because the idea is you'd pay almost no money. You'd get this little book and you could read an entire detective story on the train, on wherever you were going. And so it became these were the early pulp novels, because they were made on cheap paper, pulp paper. They sold for very little. Many people could afford them. They weren't the nice kind of leather bound or hardcover bound books that wealthier people would have. These were affordable to the masses. And so they had a tremendous turnover. New titles were constantly being churned out. And a lot of times they kind of tapped into this Victorian obsession with true crime, because they would take cases that had just, you know, scandalized all of England, and they would fictionalize them lightly. And so because Victorians loved kind of what Dorothy Sayers referred to as comfortable horrors. They loved to read about murder. They loved to read about all these wonderful, gruesome crimes. And so you have within the vein of romantic literature, you kind of have the Gothic, and then you had these sensational novels, which were a little grittier, a little more violent. And Veronica and Stoker have a detective series that they're following. And they both kind of fight over who gets to read the novels first. And so they're constantly stealing them from each other. And so I created this fictitious kind of mid-Victorian female lady detective running around in her big crinoline called Arcadia Brown. And I keep getting notes from readers saying, I can't find the Arcadia. And I'm like, no, they're fiction. They're fiction. I made them up. They don't exist. And so usually Veronica gets to those first, and Stoker has to console himself because he also has a penchant for scandalous French novels. He loves romances. He loves sexy books. He is a huge romantic. He's a great big sentimentalist. He is just a marshmallow. So he's usually off reading his French romances while Veronica finishes up the detective books and then passes them on.
And I love
and
that
there's actually one little Easter egg for people who are paying attention. Arcadia Brown's sidekick is named Garvin, and that is a nod to Modesty Blaze.
Oh,
because I'm a huge Modesty Blaze fan.
fun.
So that's where that came from.
I also love that you play with in the books, especially with this new one. I feel like you play with a lot of those sensation fiction tropes in a really fun way too.
Well, there's also, we've got JJ Butterworth, girl reporter, who is trying to make a name for herself, and she writes for a very sensationalist illustrated newspaper.
Yeah.
And if you've ever seen any of the coverage that was published during the time that Jack the Ripper was doing horrible things in the East End of London, you've probably seen some of those really ghoulish, horrible illustrations from the illustrated daily papers. And so, Victorian people just couldn't get enough of that. They loved it. So, we have our own versions of that we love. I mean, you can't get us away from reality TV and Twitter train wrecks and everything else. So, we're no better than they are. We just do it. We have different media for it.
Yeah. As Matt and I sat on the couch last night and watched the new episode of The New Joe Millionaire.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
So Carolyn wants to know, should we expect to see more of our favorite minor characters like Julian and JJ?
And I literally wrote a scene with Julian and JJ yesterday that's going to be in Veronica 8. So yeah, I have to be careful how much I put those characters into the books, just because of the fact that I don't want it to turn into the Julian and JJ show, and I don't want it to be the Tiberius show. So I try to kind of make sure that, because every book has to have its alternating cast of characters, the new people coming in that are related to whatever puzzle they're solving. And then we've got the overarching characters of Veronica and Stoker, and then the people who are supporting to them. So I can't put everybody in every book. So I kind of, try to balance it and alternate who goes into which book.
I love this question from Gabby. So she wants to know, how far in Veronica's future do you imagine that she's writing her memoirs? Is she writing them in real time, or is she looking back at them at an older age?
Oh, she's definitely not writing them in real time. She is, she's looking back on them from an older age, for sure, with some perspective as to what the events were. Veronica is a fairly, but not perfectly reliable narrator. So I picture her sitting there, years into the future, being able to look back on her early womanhood and reflecting on the adventures that have happened and what's gone on and putting it all down. Now, when she started doing this, I don't know. I don't know what age she decided to start keeping a record of it all. Because I like that they feel like she may have written them fairly soon after they happened. But I also like the idea that maybe she went back and edited things 40 years later.
Yeah. Let me check, make sure I've gotten everything in here.
I'm so sorry that I can't see the chat, because I would love to see what people are saying.
It's you should definitely go back and read it, because so we've been talking about star signs. There is a TV recommendation for you, which I'm sure you watched on Netflix, The Curious Creations of Christine McConnell.
Oh my God, yes. I loved it. It was bananas. Yeah. And they only did the one season of it. Which is too bad, because I thought it was really fascinating. But yeah. That was totally, so whoever recommended that, you get me. Yeah, absolutely.
There was Carolyn, who also said that she didn't realize that butterfly asses had a smell, and that our chat has been very educational.
Okay, but to be clear, I deliberately referred to butterfly ass because I wanted another square on Jeff Abbott's bingo card. Like, that was on purpose. That was for Jeff Abbott.
And, it's interesting that would be something that you didn't come across in research, but that you didn't actually realize until you ordered this kit to come home.
Well, and the thing is, like, one of my favorite things to do when I travel is, if the city has a vivarium, a butterfly habitat, I'll go. I've been to them, and New Orleans has an amazing one. I've been to New Orleans, DC, lots of different places have them, and they're fantastic. And I love to go, but you just don't get that same intensity of smell when it's not in your own kitchen. It's a little bit more spread out, and I think it may have to do with what it smells like when they're first out of the chrysalis, and they're enjoying their digestive capabilities for the first time. I don't know. That's a theory. I'm going to go with it anyway.
Patty wants to know, she says, we know a lot about Veronica's family. Are we going to see Stoker pursue more information about his father at some point?
We will see a lot of where Stoker comes from in book 8, because book 8 is actually a lot about Tiberius. And I don't think it's going to give too much away to say that a lot of the action takes place in their family home outside of London. So that's going to be, getting to know a lot of people around the Templeton veins, and really getting a peek at where Stoker came from.
One of the things that you do really well with your email newsletters, you're always talking about great things that you have read, that you've enjoyed. You've read lately that you loved with the chat?
You froze on me for just a second there. So can you repeat the question?
Sure. So one of the things that I love about your email newsletter is that you're always sharing reading recommendations in it that you send out. And if you guys aren't signed up, she sends out like one a month. It's a great newsletter. Can you tell us
going out on the 5th?
Yeah. So can you tell everybody maybe one or two things that you've read lately that you've loved?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I love to read memoirs, not just of Victorian people, but other people whose lives are very different from mine. And I just finished Georgina Paskogan's Swan Dive. She is the first Asian American soloist with the New York City Ballet. And she wrote, it's a kind of an irreverent, over the top, really dramatic, fascinating book about what it's like to be a dancer. In the most of her career has been spent in the corps, of course, of this kind of legendary ballet company, and what it's been like to kind of break down some barriers, because ballet is changing hugely right now. And she is one of the people who's pushing for change. And it's a really, really fascinating book. I am super excited to get my hands, and I have not read it yet. This is on my can't wait TBR list, is Jessie Q. Sutanto's 4 Aunties and a Wedding. It's the follow-up to last year's Dial A for Aunties. And I loved that debut so hard. It's a cozy mystery, and it's about an enormous Singaporean Indonesian family, and what happens when the young girl, she's not young girl, she's a young girl to me, goes on a blind date, and her blind date drops dead, and the aunties kind of help her with the corpse for the course of the book. It's hilarious. And the follow-up is coming out. You would know this better than I. It's coming up really soon, though. I can't remember the exact date that it's going to be out, but I'm super excited.
It comes out March 29th.
Okay, excellent. Anyway, that's 4 Aunties and a Wedding, and I'm very excited to read that. What about you? What are you reading?
I am reading I'm reading some Jane Ann Krentz right now. I've read a couple of her Amanda Quick books, but I've never read any of the Jane Ann Krentz ones. So she's just wrapped up this trilogy, the Fog Lake trilogy, about these 2 PIs who grew up in this town where everybody's psychic, and now they're living in Seattle working as PIs using their psychic powers. So I'm just like inhaling the whole series right now. They're so much fun.
She has been so lovely to me. She was a hugely formative writer for me. When I think I started reading her when I was probably about 22, and that's when she was writing as Amanda Quick, and she was writing her Regency romances. And I loved those books. And she was one of those writers who, the first time I saw her talking in public about loving one of my books, I was like, oh, because that was amazing. And I love her stuff. Yeah, her Jane Ann Krentz stuff is really fun too.
I also just ordered the first in the Arcane Society series, because I've never read those. So I'm like, I've been veering more into the like romantic suspense end of mystery lately, just because I've been a little burned out on just like mystery stuff. Katie mentioned
to kind of dip a toe into the other pools.
Katie said in the comments that she thought that you might like Finlay Donovan is Killing It. Are you familiar with that one?
I just finished it.
Oh,
a
did you
couple of
love
days
it?
ago. I enjoyed the first one that came out last year.
Mhm.
I can't remember. Killing It is the first one, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. I read that one when it came out. So the one I just finished is Knocks 'Em Dead, which is the new one that came out like a week or two ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Which
very fresh, very different.
Mhm. So I know that you have a book coming out in the fall. Can you tell everybody a little bit about it?
Oh, yes. The book of my heart. I love this book so much. This is my first contemporary, and I am just beyond excited about this book. We are probably just a few weeks away from being able to launch the cover and reveal that, which is very exciting. It's called Killers of a Certain Age, and it's about four 60-year-old female assassins who have to band together to take out the organization that employs them. And so I got an email today from the vice president of PR for the publishing company who was like, I've been referring to this as La Femme Nikita meets Golden Girls, which and I emailed him back immediately and said, I keep calling it Killing Eve meets Golden Girls. So we're kind of on the same page. But it's this book was just a bananas amount of fun to write. I had an incredible time writing it, and it is I'm super proud of it because it is the most I have ever pushed myself as a writer, and it is just it's over the top fun. I cannot wait to launch this book in September.
Yay. I'm so excited. I cannot wait to read it. I wasn't sure whether because I know that we could see I haven't seen the cover, but I know that the title was in the publisher catalog, so I wasn't sure if they had announced the title yet. But Killers of Certain Age is a fantastic title too.
The vice president, his name is Craig Burke. I give him all the credit in the world. He's the one who named it. Yeah, he's amazing. He's the one who actually named it. It had a different working title that I kind of figured they were not going to let me keep, and they didn't. And then Craig's the one who came up with Killers of a Certain Age. And I was like, you know what? I kind of love it. So it worked out really, really well. He does very well by me. So yes, he named the baby. Craig named the baby.
We love Craig. So speaking of titles, so was An Impossible Imposter is the perfect title for this one. What is the concept or the construct for coming up with names for the Veronica books?
You know, I had a running joke with my editor about the fact that, and it ended up not being a joke. And I sent her this kind of template that I constructed with a whole bunch of kind of over the top Victorian adjectives, and then some very specific nouns like, you know, caper and extravaganza and expedition and adventure. And then you can mix and match them. You can just kind of pick one from column A and one from column B and create your own adventure. Impossible Imposter was one of those that just named itself really, really easily. Most of the Veronica titles come really easily. The very first one is called A Curious Beginning because, again, they would not let me have my working title because they said it was too long. I wanted to call it The Unlikely Adventures of Veronica Speedwell, Volume 1. And they were like, no, you can't have that. That's too long. We're not putting that on a cover. And I was like, fine, then you come up with a title. And they were like, how about A Curious Beginning? And I was like, damn it. Yeah. So it was great. Because, you know, I was kind of hoping they'd be like, no, you know what? We couldn't come up with a title. You can have your ridiculous long one. But no, they came up with one. And it worked great. And so from then on, it was you know, kind of very easy to pull out an element of the book and then put a cool adjective with it and kind of work it that way. Impossible Imposter just sort of named itself. And the next one, we haven't announced the title, but the working title just clicked and it went fine. And then I have not even started to write the synopsis for book 9. And the other day, my husband said a phrase and I went, that's the book title. Like I've already been Googling it online to make sure nobody else has used it. And it's fine. It's perfect. So like book 9 is already titled. So
awesome.
Sometimes I get what I want and sometimes I don't. It's fine.
And then so for covers, do you get any input on any of the little images that end up on the cover?
I get input in a very small way. What will happen is my editor comes to me and says, okay, I'm getting ready to brief the art department about the book. She'll prepare a presentation and she'll ask me to give her kind of any visual elements. You know, are there any things that you can think of in the book that you'd love to see on the cover. She gets me, if there are any colors that I've got in mind, anything like that. And then she puts together this gorgeous presentation that I never see that goes to the art department, and then they go off and work their magic. And they are very, very kind about trying to work in if I've suggested an element. They struck gold with this packaging that they created. They started it with the trade paperback reissue of the very first Veronica Speedwell book. The hardcover had a different concept, and they said, you know what, we're not 100% with this. Let's try something else. So then they created this packaging, and it's absolutely golden. I love it so much. Everybody loves it. Like, they have fits over these covers. And it's 100% down to that art department just being geniuses. And I will every once in a while say, like with Murderous Relation, I said, you know what? I would love it, if possible, if this could be the book that has the black cover, because we haven't done black yet. And this feels like a book that needs a black cover. And also I'm using diamond stars in this book. So since there's a falling element on every cover, maybe diamond stars. And that's literally all I said. And they came back with this gorgeous cover that has all of those on it and so much more. And then the book that came out last year, An Unexpected Peril, there's a very specific shade of blue that I talk a lot about in the book that I made up, but it's based on a color that I found that actually exists in a stately home in England. And I had my editor send them the comp of that color, and they said, yeah, we'll do the cover in that color because it's very striking. And so it was beautiful that they were able to do that. Apart from that, no, I don't. The cover is, I don't want to say it's done by committee, but there are a lot of people who have to approve the cover and who have to weigh in. And one of the groups that really has a lot of say in that is the sales team, because they know what the accounts, the key accounts, the booksellers are really going to be able to say, hey, I can make a gorgeous display out of this, or this is going to catch a reader's attention, because it's much more about catching the reader's eye and bringing them in to look at the book than it is necessarily telling the story of what's in the book. And so that's what they're trying to package is an enticement. And so they do that far better than I ever could. So I don't try to interfere too much in what they're doing. Those are not hills that I die on. I publish traditionally because I feel like they're experts and they know what they're doing in these areas. And so I just kind of defer to their expertise, and they're doing gorgeous covers. So I'm not going to complain.
So you mentioned that you are contracted through Book 9. Do you have in your mind a certain number of books in the series that you want to do, or are you just kind of going to keep doing it as long as you can?
I'm open. I don't have a set number. I feel like you don't really know what's going to happen down the road. And so, kind of taking things as they come. I have, I actually get to see my publisher in April. I get to go to New York, and I have 3 different projects I'm going to be, discussing with them. And one of them is the next Veronica. And I'm very interested to see, where they want to go with it, where I want to go with it. I know that readers have been amazing about this series, and they love it, and I love writing it. So, hopefully it's something we'll be able to continue for many books to come, because Veronica has super fun adventures.
Okay, so we are just about, I have a cat chewing on my knee because it's almost time for him to have dinner.
Sassy.
You want to come say hi? Oh, he can say hi real quick.
Yeah.
So this is Calvin. This is the one who was chewing. So that is going to about do it for us this evening. But to recap, for anyone who might have tuned in late, we have been chatting with Deanna Raybourn. The newest book in her Veronica Speedwell series, An Imposter, just came out today. If you order copies from Murder by the Book, we've got signed book plates. They are purple to match the book cover, which I loved when they came in, that they match perfectly. So if you order copies from us, you will get a book plate to go with it. If you already have it and you're looking for other books to support Murder by the Book, I have dropped links to the books that Deanna has mentioned that she has enjoyed recently in the comments if you want to get those as well. If you missed any part of our chat, you can rewatch it on Facebook and YouTube. They archive them both. If you want to hear her talk a little bit more about last year's book, we did a virtual event with Deanna, Lauren Willig, and Tasha Alexander. So that's up there. We also got to talk with Deanna and Nicole Glover in the fall about Nicole's newest book. So it is also up there. There's a great wealth of virtual events out there if you guys want to tune in to watch those. Deanna, thank you so much for doing this. It's so good to see you.
Thank you, John. It's always my joy to come to Murder by the Book, even if it's virtual. So thank you for having me.
Thank you.
And I hope I'll see you in September.
Yeah, everybody think good thoughts for September. We will keep our fingers crossed that we will get to see you and celebrate the release of Killers of a Certain Age. But for right now, everybody, Imposter is fantastic. So you should definitely pick it up. Deanna, have a great night, and we will talk to you soon.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Bye.